For something and against nothing. For something and against nothing. So that is a powerful spiritual paradox, and we're going to dive deep into it and see what spiritual inspiration it has for us. And so, join me if you will. It's a Saturday morning, August 1959, and we are celebrating that we've just attended a spiritual retreat at the Asilomar Conference Center. Beautiful Pacific Grove, California. It's 74 degrees. When we look out, we can see right above the dunes and we feel the ocean breeze. And we're excited because last night at Merrill Hall, there were wonderful speakers and musicians, and we're on our way over to the chapel building, and we're going to hear our founder, Dr. Ernest Holmes, give a talk as a final farewell to us. So are you with me? Yeah, I think when I said 74 degrees, and you'll go anywhere, exactly right. Now, some of us don't realize, as we're heading over to hear Dr. Ernest Holmes, that we will return to our beloved Arizona, Phoenix Valley, and some of us will be part of creating the Valley of the Sun Spiritual Center, and that 60 years later at New Vision Center, we're going to be celebrating practitioners and enjoying the inspiration from this talk we're about to hear. So, Sermon by the Sea. So Dr. Ernest Holmes was born in the late 1800s, and his primary ministry was in the 20th century, the 1900s. He's the founder of our teaching, which Science of Mind, or sometimes called religious science. And one of the reasons that something becomes a legacy and you don't know that it's going to, is that Dr. Holmes gives this talk in August of 1959, and he makes his transition in April of the following year. So what emerges in this is this beautiful legacy of our teaching and a call for us. So it's relevant for us even here today. So he begins with things like, our religion or our teaching is not something to be lived merely here at Asilomar. And he reminds us we are part of the evolution of human destiny. We are part of the unfoldment of the divine intelligence in human affairs. He says, having had the privilege of starting religious science, I would wish, will, and desire above all things that the simplicity and purity of our teaching could never be violated. So that's something I really want to pull out, that our teaching has a profound simplicity in it. And you heard Reverend Leslie talk about religious science, science of mind, is a correlation of the best ideas of philosophy, how does life get to be the way it is, the true essence that goes across religious teachings, our relationship with the divine, and also the study of scientific or metaphysical laws, the primary one of which is that consciousness creates experience, the law of cause and effect. So our teaching has a simplicity. There's two major principles: love, the unity of all life, and law, that life is lawful. So Dr. Holmes says, we have discovered that which the great, the good, and the wise have sung about and thought about, the imprisoned splendor within ourselves and within each other, and have had direct contact with it. And he says, whether we call it the Christ in us, or the Buddha, or the Atman, or the Son of God, the child of God, the living spirit, makes no difference. And what I want to pull out there is that any time you touch our journey here, like the journey at the New Vision Center for 2023, it's all paths lead us home. And we're in a little sub-place in the year where it's a little series on surrender. But what have you heard? You've heard love and law. So a few weeks ago, Reverend Karen Einhaus did a beautiful talk about compassion and care of the soul. She's talking about love, remembering who we are. The last 2 weeks, Reverend Leslie Goodwin did a beautiful series about our worldview and how that it shows in the meaning we make about life. That's the law. So there's something really beautiful about those profound principles. They stand the test of time. So back in the day, back in that time, it was pretty common for a teacher to say, welcome, come on in. If you're a Catholic, we'll make you a better Catholic. If you're a Baptist, we'll make you a better Baptist. Now today, we might say if you're a Wiccan, a Baha'i, you're spiritual but not religious, like we would just have a lot of different words, but we'd say, welcome, you don't have to give up anything. We have something that we hope can deepen your experience. All right. And then Dr. Holmes, maybe touching into the realization of his own physical immortality, starts to give us a charge. And he says, I think we have brought a blessing to the world, the possibility of something expressing through us. And here comes this sort of famous quote, and we'll have this on the slide. He says, it would be wonderful indeed if a group of persons should arrive on Earth who were for something and against nothing. That would be the summum bonum, the Latin for highest ideal, of human organization, wouldn't it? He goes on to say, it is in the life of the individual. Find me one person who is for something and against nothing, who is redeemed enough not to condemn others out of the burden of his soul, and I will find another Savior and an exalted human being. I was born in 1961, and 30 years after that, I stumbled into my first religious science center, a place like this. And I was one person with a burden on her soul. So at that point in my life, I was pretty newly sober. I had started seeing a therapist. She became exacerbated with me and suggested a place called Agape on Olympic in Santa Monica. And so I walked in, and the burdens of my soul was that I'd come from challenges, deep, profound hurts and pains, but I'd also done things I felt deeply ashamed about. I was confused about what would make me happy, and I was mad at the world. So I walk into this place, and it seemed very cheerful. It was this multiracial, 1,000 people, tiny chairs, and I made my way in, and it's amazing music, and I'm sitting there, and next to me is this kind of hippie guy who has a fanny pack. Now, why that's important is that every time he gesticulated with joy, which was frequently, I would get like jostled by his joy. So there I am, jostled by his joy, and all I heard for 2.5 hours was, there's a part of you that's never been hurt, harmed, or endangered. There's a part of you that's never been hurt, harmed, or endangered. And I thought, these people are in denial. Because there was sure as heck a part of me that had been deeply hurt. And in fact, I didn't know it at the time, but we all have a core life question. And my life question was, and is to this day, am I safe? Now, some of us have a question, do I matter? Who am I? Am I loved? Some of you might have come into this incarnation with, how do I spread joy? Or, what's mine to create? Or, where is peace? But we all have some core question. So there was a part of me that had been deeply hurt. And yet, after all of that jostling, I think the hippie guy hugged me like, oh, Lord, I came back. I came back on Wednesday, and I came back on Sunday, and basically I haven't kept coming, I've kept coming back for 30 years. Because I was also hearing about the possibility of something greater, the idea of God not as a mad dad in the sky, but as an infinite presence, the the concept that awakened my mind that if divine God, spirit is infinite, then it's more than my intellect could behold, like so many beautiful ideas and practices. So I was having awakening. And all around the same time, I also heard about a wonderful women's self-defense program. And it was called Impact Personal Safety. And I started to get involved with it. So I'm going to tell a little bit about that story. And I realized that talking about that might be something that could be triggering to people. So I'd like us all just take a deep breath in through your nose, out through your mouth like you're pushing out through a straw. This is a safe environment. Even if emotions get triggered, you're surrounded by a safe, just a zone of a lot of safety. And that is true for the beloveds who are with us on the online campus. If you need to know you're safe, just you say, I am safe, I want to know I'm safe. Someone will respond to you in the chat. And here in the sanctuary, if you're a person who could be there for another who is having an emotional moment, just raise your hands, smile to your neighbor, just like we are creating super zone of safety. So people who've been in classes, we're safe here. Thank you. Because I do want each of you, I'm going to talk about my question, am I safe? It's a raw question. This teaching can handle it. I want you to think about what your core question is and how your spiritual journey is helping you with that. So as I got involved with the self-defense program, we have an image from one of my very first classes, and it's a little grainy, but this is me. You'll notice that back then I thought perhaps leg warmers and a mullet would keep me safe. Had elbow pads, and I have so much compassion for this young woman, because we'll close the image, we're not going to linger too long on the images, but this young woman was so against the violence that had happened to me, so against being hurt. But I started to find something to be for. I was for the fighting spirit. I was for my ability to be safe. I was for deserving that my life was worth fighting for. Oh, it was so liberating and so important. So then I enjoyed it. It was transformative. So some of you relate to this. If some is good, more is better. So I took every single class they had, and I became a certified instructor. And for about the next 10 years, I was in this position. We'll show the next slide. I was on my knee, and I was coaching. So in this image, I want you to focus on, I'm for empowerment. Yes, there's a woman who's on the ground, but what we're saying to her is, he'll make a mistake. When you go 100%. You're like a cat that doesn't want to be held. You deserve to be safe. And every single woman who is lined up with their toes to the mat, we're not against assailant. We're for that woman, that she can be safe. So we'll close this, because we'll close the image and just realize that was a big transition. So that whole period, I was really focused on these women deserve to be safe. And what I started to notice is different ways of thinking about this whole topic. So there was a dear friend of mine who has a horrific abuse story that she has survived through. But she said, this isn't about violence, it's about love. It taught me to love again. There's another woman with like the best manicure ever, and her hair was all up, and she just said, like, if he's going to do that, that's what he's going to get. And she was completely about like cause and effect. She was unaffected. So I started to develop different points of view. And of course, in the next 20 years, I also did about 1 billion fear to faith worksheets and forgiveness things about family patterns, and did, prayers and workshops and classes to release my own judgment, to love myself more, to have compassion for everyone. So these dynamics were being worked on spiritually and practically. And late in life, I married the big fella and moved to Arizona. And it had been just recently about 20 years since I had done that self-defense. Now, I wasn't, and I don't feel nervous in my life today if on the mean streets of Old Town Scottsdale, I was, grabbed from behind. I can count on Reverend Groin Slap. I would do something. So it's not so much about that, but it was like, could I still do this? I just wondered if my body could still do it, if I could handle it emotionally. And I had such respect for the training. I wanted to prove that one could go 20 years without doing it, and it would still be there. So just a few weeks ago, I went back for a weekend, and we have an image of me. Yes! Yeah. So at this stage of life, one of my superpowers became potty mouth. And I'm saying potty mouth, like I sounded like that character from Ted Lasso, Roy Kent, like, but I could do it, and it was exciting. So we'll close the image. On the second day, they had us, lying down for scenarios where, the guy gets on top, you wait for your opening, and you go 100%. So I'm lying there on these mats. And I know what's coming, so I'm breathing deeply. Yeah, I know I can do it. I'll do something. It's like, I'll do something. I know I will do something. And then something happened. I started to think, like, if this really happened to me, what would that be? And I realized there was a part of me that kind of rose up, like above the scene. And don't get this wrong, but it was almost like a little bit of humor. Like, really, sweet spirit, we're going down like this. Oh, okay. Really. There was a part of me that it didn't feel like it was real. There is a part of me that's never been hurt, harmed, or endangered. Yes. So a full circle moment where all at once, like they say the years that the locusts have been eaten, like everything that had been a challenge about that situation just melted away. That in that moment I could feel, I am safe. I am safe regardless of circumstance. I would never wish to face that kind of circumstance. I would never wish a harm on anyone else. And yet what I know is, for me and for all of us, there's something greater than what has happened to us. So that full circle moment answered my question, am I safe? And the answer is yes, I'm divinely safe, always. So this is the promise of our spiritual teaching, that for each of us, we're feeling the truth of the divine, not because circumstances work out for us, but because it's true about who we are in the center of our being. So I think we have the image of the New Vision. The New Vision model, it shows us the heart in the center that we come home to. It's the remembrance of who we are. So I'm going to close with a little more inspiration from Dr. Holmes' Sermon by the Sea. You see, he started to talk about the find me one person. So if I lose the burden of my soul, I am a redeeming human being that can lift others. He goes on with some more find me ones. There's about a dozen, but I'll pull out just a few. He says, find me one person who knows how to talk to God really, and I'll walk through the woods and the leaves of the trees will clap their hands. Find me someone whose song is celestial, Aaron Thomas, because it is the outburst of the cosmic urge to sing, and I shall hear the music of the spheres. Find me someone who has detached emotional and psychological ego from the real self, and I will know a direct pathway to my own communion. So in that find me one person, what you keep hearing is one person has a breakthrough, it lifts all. And then Dr. Holmes says, now what does all this mean? I'm talking about you and myself. When I say find a person, I don't mean go over to Rome, to London, or back to your own church. The search is not external. All of these people I've been talking about have no existence as such until they are finally centered in our own soul. So that's what's possible for us. This is a time where I am just encouraging each and every one of you and me and all of us to continue our spiritual walk because it makes a difference for the whole. And Dr. Holmes ends with this quote that we'll have on the slide. You are religious science. You are NVC. You are spiritual truth. Our ministers, our teachers, our practitioners, our laity. You find me 1,000 people in the world who know what religious science is and use it and live it as it is. And I'll myself live to see a new world, a new heaven, and a new earth here. That is the charge for us. That we find that place in us that is for the thing we desire, that is for the peace or the wholeness or the love or the grace or the truth or the abundance, the joy, that we find a place in us that is so for that spiritual reality that we know it as the only truth of life, that it must be found within, and there's nothing to be against. Find me one person. That person is you. That person is me. That person is all of us. And so it is. So let us take this to prayer. How grateful I am to know the truth that the divine, the infinite loving presence of God is the only reality, and however we call it, however we relate to it, it is deeply for us, in us, and as us. So the true presence of all of the qualities of being, they are revealing in, through, and as each right now. I remember who I am, an invisible reality revealing itself in this moment, here and now. And from that sense of my own remembrance and unification with the one life, I speak this word. What I claim and know is that for all connected to the sound and vibration of this prayer, in this moment and all moments, that each is lifted up because the truth of who they are is awakened and quickened. And as we are lifted up individually, we collectively contribute to a world that is hungry for more truth to be revealed. Because truth is eternal and creative and unlimited, there is always more of the divine to be shown through us, and I am so grateful that we are saying yes to it now. And so I give great thanks that this prayer is its own answer. Gratefully, we release, we let go, we know the law says yes, and knowing this together, we say, and so it is.